Hello, Uriel from Ninja Bear Studio here. Welcome back. In this video, I want to talk about the configuration of the gameplay ability system, which is a prerequisite for Ninja Combat. In the documentation site, you can find step-by-step instructions under Guides, Configure Gas, or Configure the Gameplay Ability System. In the engine, after having both plugins Ninja Gas and Combat installed, the first step is to configure the Asset Manager. In there, we must add the Ninja Gas ability setup as a recognized primary asset. We can navigate to Project Settings, Asset Manager, and add the appropriate primary asset. I've already done this before, but let me show you what that looks like. As you can see, I have the Ninja Gas data asset with the proper name Ability Bundle Data, and the correct folder where those assets will exist in my project. With that done, we can start configuring Ninja Combat. Let's go back to the documentation site and check the initial steps for Ninja Combat. First, we need to configure specific Ninja Combat classes for the ability system globals. You will find this in the combat setup under ability system, and you need to add these lines to your default game configuration file. Then, we also need to create the collision channels required by the combat system. You can do that by copying these lines to your default engine configuration file, or directly in the engine in your project settings, collision, and new trace channels. I already have my weapon trace channel for melee attacks and projectile for projectile hits. But like I said, you can create these channels in the engine by clicking new trace channel and filling the information as needed. With that done, we're ready to configure our ability system. First, I'll create an ability data setup in the folder that I configure in the Asset Manager. I can right-click in the content browser, select Ninja Bear Studio, Ninja Gas, and Gas Setup. I already have a data asset configured for my player, so I'll just delete this one and open the correct one instead. This data asset allows me to add default classes to my ability system component, such as attribute sets, gameplay effects, gameplay abilities, and gameplay tags. Let's add the Ninja Combat attribute set. We'll do that by selecting the Ninja Combat attribute set and the appropriate attribute table to initialize the default values. While we're here, I will also add the replenished stamina gameplay effect, which will be useful later on when we are working on our attacks. Now, regarding the data table, let me show you how you can create a default table with proper values without having to write everything manually. In the Ninja Combat documentation, under Ability System, and then Gameplay Attributes, you will find a JSON file that can be used to initialize the data table. So all you have to do is save this file to your computer and import this file in Unreal Engine. You can drag and drop the JSON file or create a new data table using the attribute metadata role type. With that done, you will have a data table with all combat attributes and their default values that can be used to initialize the Ninja Combat attribute set. Now we're ready to configure the ability system component, which can be in your player character or in your player state. To decide if your ability system component should be in your player state or your player character, you need to consider if your character can be destroyed and respawned, and if your character needs to change levels. If the answer is yes, then your ability system component should be in your player state. If the answer is no, or you're just doing a quick prototype, then the ability system component can be in your player character. Back in the documentation, if you navigate to Ninja Gas, Architecture, Base Ability System Component Classes, you will find a list of all base classes that you have access that will create or obtain an ability system component for you. In this project, I will use the player state as the owner of the ability system component. I already have my BP player state. As you can see, it extends from Ninja Gas player state, and it contains its own ability system component instance. This component allows me to set our data assets to initialize abilities, effects, attribute sets, and so on. Next, I will need to create a player character based on the Ninja Gas player character class. This class does not have an ability system component, but it will obtain it from the player state when that replicates. But since I have these other components, my actual class here is yet another subclass of Ninja Gas player character, one that adds my additional components. In any case, the base class allows me to override the ability setup that I defined in the player state, which can be useful if your game supports different types of characters, such as a warrior, a mage, a rogue, each one with their own ability setup. But since that's not the case here, I will just leave this empty. Now this completes the setup and we're ready to test the project. I can hit play, go to my console, and type show debug ability system, and then back in the game I can see that my avatar is set correctly as the player, the owner of the ability system component is the player state, and I can see all my attributes, including their default values. Great, now we're ready to work with Ninja Combat. In the next video, we will start configuring our weapons. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.